The following program is sponsored by CBN.
Coming up, go on an archaeological excavation.
We're dealing with real people, real places, real events. This is not mythology.
Visit the first capital of ancient Israel.
Welcome to ancient Shiloh.
And see how this dig is proving the Bible true.
The Bible talks about these people. We've got the image right there.
Plus, the son of Pastor Tony Evans and a featured singer on The Voice. Anthony Evans performs live on today's 700 Club. Welcome to the 700 Club. Hurricane warnings are in effect along the Louisiana coast as Tropical Storm Barry began hitting the parts of the state early today.
People there are getting ready, and forecasters say it's expected to bring heavy rains and widespread flooding. George Thomas brings us the story.
Thousands of Louisianans are breaking out sandbags or fleeing to higher ground as Tropical Storm Barry threatens to turn into the first hurricane of the season.
This is going to be a major weather event for a huge portion of the state of Louisiana.
Clarence Brooks has lived here in Plaquemines Parish for 65 years. He has lived through Hurricane Katrina and, like so many residents, isn't taking any chances.
Yeah, we lost everything. We started from scratch. But we didn't lose everything because we still had our lives and our health.
The forecast shows Barry making landfall as a tropical storm. And because it's a very slow-moving system which could stay in the area longer than usual, authorities are warning residents to brace for serious rainfall and widespread flooding, posing a huge potential test of New Orleans' flood defenses.
Already the ground's very saturated, the Mississippi running very, very high to portions of Louisiana. It's not going to take that much to produce problems, but we are talking about very heavy rainfall, the potential for a foot or two of rain along into the east of the track. And notice it's only slowly making its move off toward the north.
Hurricane warnings are up for most of the Louisiana coast as the weather system has already brought dangerous storm surge, heavy rains and gusty winds to city.
Well, I'm more concerned because if it turns to the east and we're on the wrong side of it, you have a lot of rain. You have a lot of flooding going on.
So the state's governor is telling folks to get ready and not wait until the last moment.
I'm imploring residents to prepare.
Parts of the region could get up to 25 inches of rainfall. Making matters more precarious, the Mississippi River is already at extremely high levels, above 16 feet in some places. In New Orleans, where 50 levees failed back in 2005 during Hurricane Katrina, the city's mayor is warning residents that water is going to be their biggest threat.
We do expect that this storm will be slow moving. We're going to get heavy rainfall for up to 48 hours.
In low-lying areas like Plaquemines Parish, some 10,000 people have been ordered to evacuate ahead of the storm. Tropical Storm Barry is expected to make landfall sometime between late Friday night into Saturday afternoon. George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, New Orleans certainly needs to get prepared for this because if you're talking 2 feet of rain on top of historic levels at the Mississippi River, that's a recipe for disaster. Operation Blessing is already pre-positioning teams to provide relief work. If you'd like to donate to our Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund, you can write us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463, or you can call us right now, 1-800-700-7000. Well, in other news, the federal deficit is going to be much higher this year. It's expected, get this, to reach $1 trillion. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That is right, Gordon. The government is getting closer to hitting that debt limit quicker than expected, and that could force an early vote in Congress raising the debt ceiling. CBN's Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson brings us that story.
Well, many lawmakers think with the U.S. Treasury set to run out of borrowing money by mid-September, just a few legislative days after they return from August recess, they can't wait until the brink to vote to raise the debt ceiling. And some, like Senator Chris Coons, advocate it's time to eliminate the debt ceiling altogether.
For us to default on America's sovereign debt would have significant consequences, One of the reasons that more countries and more investors around the world invest in American Treasury instruments is because we are seen as the most reliable issuer of government debt on earth, and to default on that debt would certainly harm that and increase our costs of borrowing. Folks who think we should continue to have a debt ceiling and be forced to vote on the debt ceiling believe that because they're concerned, as I am, about our deficits and our national debt. We should find responsible and bipartisan mechanisms to put in place reductions in our spending and our deficits. Coming right up against the debt ceiling, playing chicken with our debt ceiling year after year, is not the right way to do this.
Neither Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi or Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell have indicated yet whether or not we'll see a vote to address the issue this month or if they'll hold off until September.
Thanks, Abigail. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is calling on Hispanic evangelicals to plead with President Trump to stop this weekend's planned raids of deportations of illegal immigrants across the country. This after she credited Hispanic evangelicals for the president's decision to call off the first round of deportations.
When you announced this before, I called, God bless you, some people of faith about this, evangelicals who support the president for other reasons, but who have been good on immigration issues, but usually. And basically, they were very concerned that this goes too far because these raids were not what they signed up for with President Trump. And I think their calls to the president made a difference.
Will you appeal to the president, though, to put off these raids?
I'm going to appeal to the people of faith, the faith-based organizations, to appeal to the president. I think that they put him in office and they have a better voice for this.
Pelosi said evangelical leaders told her many of the families facing deportation Sunday will be in church. Well, a Republican running for governor in the state of Mississippi sparked a media firestorm for refusing to let a female reporter go on a 15-hour campaign ride along with him unless she agreed to bring a colleague. Mississippi State Representative Robert Foster says he was following the Billy Graham rule and had promised his wife he would never be alone with another woman. Reporter Larison Campbell told CNN she felt she was being treated as a sexual object first and a reporter second. CBN News asked Foster in a phone interview if his campaign could have accommodated Campbell by bringing along another staff member. He told us the situation escalated before they got the chance.
She felt like it was a personal attack against her, and it never really got to the point of us trying to negotiate or work out those details before it went viral almost. I guess that it was an issue of me discriminating against her and sexism, and all of the feminists went nuts about it, and we just haven't even had an opportunity to get to the point of trying to work out the finer details.
Foster added he understands why Campbell might be offended, but said his vow to his wife and faith supersedes anyone's feelings. Well, after a number of complaints of bias by social media companies, President Trump hosted a group of conservatives at the White House Thursday where he told them the tech giants won't get away with it much longer. Jennifer Wishon brings us that story.
The president signaled social media giants should brace for tough actions from his administration as he traded censorship stories with a crowd of conservatives. And demonstrating tensions between those conservatives and the mainstream media, there was even a scuffle in the Rose Garden.
It happened as the conservatives at the summit waited alongside the White House press corps for the president to make a statement.
You're threatening me in the Rose Garden. Get him! You are a punk. You're not a journalist. You're a punk.
Go home. Journalist, go home. Hey, Gorka, get a job.
An explosion at the end of a day where conservative activists, thinkers, and influencers enjoyed an open and sympathetic ear from the president.
Together you reach more people than any television broadcast network by far, not even close.
Lila Rose shared how her group Live Action has been permanently barred from Pinterest, had viral videos buried on YouTube, and that's not all.
We have been for 4 years banned from doing any advertising on Twitter, and they told us that in order to reinstate our accounts, we'd have to stop calling for the defunding of Planned Parenthood and stop sharing our pro-life content.
Stories like hers are common.
The Daily Signal published a video last year with a pediatrician talking about the dangers of giving puberty blockers to kids. The video went viral on Facebook. In fact, it reached 70 million views when all of a sudden it disappeared. And we took our case to Facebook. We said, why did you take this down off of your platform? It took Facebook a little while to get back to us, but eventually they did restore the video and apologize for doing that.
A Hill TV American Barometer survey in December found 58% of voters think social networks are unfair to conservatives. The same poll found Generation Z, folks born in the mid-1990s and early 2000s, are the only age group that believes social media companies are not biased against conservatives. Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley says enough is enough.
Google, Facebook, Twitter, they've gotten these special deals from government. They've gotten a special giveaway from government. They're treated unlike anybody else. If they want to keep their special deal, here's the bargain. They have to quit discriminating against conservatives. You agree with that? No more.
Senator Hawley has introduced a bill that requires these big tech companies to prove their algorithms and content removal practices are politically neutral. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Jennifer. Gordon, back to you.
Well, they're not going to be able to prove that it's content neutral because they've been exercising editorial control over content for some time. And that will probably ratchet up before the 2020 elections, and it's going to get very political. Just recently, Amazon started taking down books from their website based on the content of the book, that the book talks about how someone left the gay lifestyle and became heterosexual. So if we're going to see this kind of content editing on these sales platforms, on these social media platforms, well then yes, the government does have to act. First Amendment rights of free speech don't extend to Facebook, they don't extend to Twitter, they don't extend to all of the social media sites. But if they're going to have the monopoly, where it's the only place you can get your views ever heard, well, then the government needs to come in. And just like it regulates all the utilities, are these now going to become a utility? They regulate all the terrestrial broadcasters, they regulate the phone companies. So it's about time that some regulation comes into being here so that we do have a free and open society. Wendy?
Amen. Up next, the Bible comes to life through archaeology.
Previous archaeologists have claimed that the archaeology disproves the Bible, but when we dig here, we find that everything matches. You read it in the Bible, you dig in the dirt, and there it is.
Watch as the hidden relics of the first capital of ancient Israel are uncovered after this.
More and more excavations in Israel are validating the Bible, and as Chris Mitchell reports, a dig has uncovered one of the Old Testament's most important sites.
You're looking at the heart of biblical Israel, along the route known as the Way of the Patriarchs. This is ancient Shiloh, the place where the Bible says Joshua divided the promised land between the 12 tribes, and where the tabernacle of the Lord stood for more than 300 years.
Welcome to ancient Shiloh. This is the first capital of ancient Israel, and it's a sacred spot because the Mishkan was here, the tabernacle where people came to connect with God.
Scott Stripling directs the excavation here, and along with dozens of volunteers, they're digging into history.
We're dealing with real people, real places, real events. This is not mythology. The coins that we excavated today, we're talking about coins of Herod the Great, Pontius Pilate, Festus, Felix, Agrippa I, Agrippa II. The Bible talks about these people. We've got the image right there.
That image includes a fortified wall built by the Canaanites. They're finding a treasure trove of artifacts, including coins and 2,000 pieces of pottery a day.
Now this one was from yesterday. It's been washed already, so you see the same form right out of the ground and yesterday, and these are those handles from the stone vessels. Remember Jesus' first miracle at Cana, they were stone jars full of water. That's that ritual purity culture of the first century.
An archaeologist looks at these shards as a fine timepiece.
Just like your great-grandmother's pottery is different from your pottery that you're using today, and once we learn the pottery, then we can use it as our primary means of dating.
Stripling says literally digging into the Bible can change your life.
You can read the Bible, you can walk the Bible, but the ultimate is to dig the Bible. You know, when we actually get into the soil, like these students from Lee University, they're literally, it's under their fingernails and in their nose and their mouth and their ears, and they're exposing this ancient culture. It becomes one with you. And sort of like we came out of the soil, and as we dig into this soil, we connect with God and with each other, I think, in a very important way.
I love getting my hands dirty. I love digging in the dirt. It's my favorite thing.
People from all ages man the dig, with the main drivers being students like Abigail.
It's tiring and exhausting, but it's really rewarding. It's exciting to find ancient things that have been laying in the dirt just waiting for us for thousands of years.
She says the Bible comes alive in the dirt.
I read the Bible totally differently than I did before I came here. And when I read the Bible, I know the places, I know what's going on. I understand it more deeply, especially where previous archaeologists have claimed that the archaeology disproves the Bible. But when we dig here, we find that everything matches. You read it in the Bible, you dig in the dirt, and there it is.
Archaeology doesn't set out to prove or disprove the Bible. What we want to do is to illuminate the biblical text, the background of the text. So to set it in a real world culture, to what we call verisimilitude. So we get an ancient literary description. Now we have a material culture that matches that. Chris, you're sitting where Samuel and Eli and Hannah and these people that we have read about, they came just like us, needing answers, needing to connect with God, needing forgiveness.
He says they dig into the past and find lessons for the present.
One of the faith lessons for us is that God is the potter and we're the clay. And even if our lives are broken, like these vessels are, God told Jeremiah, after he told him to go to Shiloh and see what he had done, he told him to go to the potter's house and look at a flawed vessel and see how the potter puts it back on the wheel and works out the imperfections. So my faith lesson is this, that yes, we're imperfect, but if we'll allow God, he wants to put us on his potter's wheel and he wants to make us a vessel of honor.
Stripling often cites Psalm 102 that says, "O Zion, your servants take delight in its stones and favor its dust."
Ultimately, Chris, if the Bible is true, then the God of the Bible has a moral claim on our lives. And as we establish the veracity of the biblical text, I hope that everyone watching will just think about that God loves us and he has a moral claim on our lives.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Shiloh, Biblical Samaria.
Well, while archaeologists are discovering artifacts every day that seem to prove the Bible, there's still treasures that remain hidden. Roman soldiers looted the Second Temple back in AD 70, and so the question is, where are the treasures of the Second Temple today? The answer can be found in CBN's latest documentary. The temple functioned like a bank, storing gold and silver reserves. It's estimated that the currency stored there would be worth billions of dollars today. When Vespasian became emperor, he put his son Titus in charge of crushing the Jewish rebellion. The climax of the war was a brutal 7-month siege of Jerusalem, which left more than 1 million Jews dead. The Romans then looted and burned the temple, a scene described in great detail by the historian Josephus.
Most of the victims were peaceful citizens, weak and unarmed, butchered wherever they were caught. Around the altar, the heaps of corpses grew higher and higher, while down the sanctuary steps poured a river of blood.
After the war, Titus refused the traditional military wreath of victory, saying, "There is no merit in conquering a people forsaken by their own God."
The Romans had a habit of, when they conquer a city, the temple, the main temple of the city, the temple of the Lord of the city, the patron saint, or how will you call it, a god, to remove his statue and to burn the temple. But when they come to the temple, there is no god to bring to the temple in Rome. But what they found were the treasures, and that's why you see it in Titus Ark as, you know, the booty which is being brought there.
Eyewitnesses say the temple treasure survived for centuries after the fall of Jerusalem. So does it still exist today? And if so, where is it?
Get your copy of Treasures of the Second Temple, available now.
Well, it's part of mystery and part of whodunit. We follow the treasures from the Second Temple that the Romans took. They took it back to Rome. They put it in a temple in Rome. And then Rome was sacked, and the Vandals took it off to Carthage. And then Carthage was defeated again, this time by the Byzantines. So the treasures went to Constantinople. And then a Christian emperor said these belong back in Jerusalem. So he put them in a church in Jerusalem. What happened next is still the mystery. If you'd like to get the full story, go to cbn.com/treasure, and you can get the Treasures of the Second Temple DVD. It's yours for a donation of any dollar amount. If you'd like it rushed to you, all you have to do is call us, 1-800-700-7000, and just say, I'd like to get the DVD about the Treasures of the Second Temple. Wendy?
Well, coming up, we're going to go behind the music with singer Anthony Evans. The worship leader opens up about grief, hope, and being altered by God. Welcome back to the 700 Club. Well, Anthony Evans' most recent album hit #1 on Billboard's gospel charts, and his songs have been called spiritual battle cries. It's easy to see why, because they were written and recorded during one of the most trying times of his life.
Gospel recording artist and worship leader Anthony Evans is the son of megachurch pastor Tony Evans. He's also an alum of NBC's The Voice. Over the past year and a half, he has endured several family tragedies, including his mom's cancer and the sudden death of his cousin, Winter Evans Pitts. Anthony's journey from grief to hope is reflected in his latest album, Altered, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard Gospel chart.
Anthony Evans joins us now, and welcome back to the 700 Club.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You were one of my first interviews a few years ago, and I know you've even been back since then, but I didn't get to interview you. But anyway, we want to talk about your journey. You've dealt with a lot of heartbreak, and some of it recently. Yeah. How has God showed up for you in so many ways and helped you?
You know, it's been very interesting. I always tell everybody, first of all, in my family, I'm the emotional one. So when it's easy for my dad or my sisters or my brother to return to hope very quickly, but I'm the one who takes a little while. You know what I mean? It's because I feel things on a really deep level. Not that they don't, but it's hard for me to rein in my feelings. And there have been times in the last, year and a half, y'all mentioned just what we've gone through as a family. I've been like, God, are you for real? Like, are you kidding me a little bit?
Yeah. This is too much.
Yeah, this is too much, which I know I represent a lot of the viewers probably watching where they're in scenarios where it's like, this is too much. Yeah. But God has He's allowed my scenarios to be altered. That's why the record's called Altered, and it's actually drawn me closer to him because I've allowed it to. And just like, for instance, with my mom, the different perspective that I have now as it relates to our relationship, as horrible as this scenario is, and we're working through all the health issues, right. There's been a new perspective that I have, and my relationship with my mom has become something that it never was before. Wow. And so God has given me little glimpses of hope. That's an example of how he's given me glimpses of hope.
All things work together for good.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, one important lesson that you've learned is you don't try to pretend that everything's okay.
No, I'm not good at that. Yes.
So what do you do?
I'm just honest. Like, I build my ministry now and what I get to do with my family on the principle of being authentic, vulnerable, and transparent. I think that is where change actually happens in the life of the listener and you, when you're actually saying what's wrong. If you go to the doctor's office and you won't tell them what's going on, they don't know, they can't start anywhere. And I believe that that's the same thing. God knows what's going on, but wants us to be honest with him.
Well, your most recent album is called Altered, and it's spelled differently than from altered, meaning changed. What's the significance behind the spelling difference?
The significance in the spelling difference is that I believe in my life, my experience has been God has allowed my scenarios to be altered by the things that you mentioned and other things that have been going on. And those experiences changing have drawn me back to him, like the proverbial altar. Like those scenarios happen, and a lot of times those are the ones that drive us back to a new and fresh perspective of him. I've been able to see God again for the first time via all these experiences in my life. So
back to the cross.
That's the bottom line.
Back to the feet of Jesus.
That's the bottom line.
And it probably, I mean, since you are, the way you described yourself is more emotional and introspective, it helps you become a better songwriter, no doubt.
Absolutely. Yes, and it helps me be just creative in general more. I actually took songs because it was me seeing God again for the first time. I took a lot of songs that people know on this album and I altered them and I changed them so you hear them again for the first time. It's kind of all kind of one thought and one theme.
Yeah. Well, how many albums do you have now?
This is actually the 10th.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
That is so crazy.
I can't believe I've almost been doing this 20 years, which means I started when I was 3.5.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not really that.
Well, tell us about when you're not, when you're not writing music, when you're not in the studio. I mean, what is Anthony up to?
I am up to a lot. I have a production company called Sherman James Productions, which I know you're talking about outside of work, but this is a whole other production company arm, produces all the events my family does. So when I'm not on stage or recording music, I'm working on the events that I do with my sisters and my dad and my brother. That's a huge part of us. Yeah.
And there they all are.
Yes,
wow, that's awesome.
that's
Great picture there. Oh, man, your mom looks great there. Well, in a few moments, you're going to do a song for us. You're going to sing a song called Fighting for Us. And that's a song that you say has healing power in the lyrics?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I sang this song for the first time live the night I sang it in front of my parents. My dad was being honored for at National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and I sang this song for the very first time the night my mom told us about her cancer diagnosis. I sang it, then we went to their hotel room to have a moment, and we were all like, what's wrong with mom and dad? Like, there's some energy that's off right now.
Yeah.
And they told us that. So this song, when I recorded it, was supposed to be an encouragement to the audience, but it's become our family's theme song. And I want the viewers to know as they listen that this isn't a gimmicky, like, let's do a song for radio. This is me singing words over them that our family needs right now, that I know that their family needs. And it's a reminder that no matter how you're feeling in the moment, that God is fighting for you in spite of you maybe feeling like he's not.
And one final question. You're going to be joining your sister Priscilla Schreier for an event called Fervent 2.0.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
As many people know, my sister was in a movie called War Room a few years back, and it was an accidental. Like, she wasn't trying to be an actress, so that went well. And then she did I Can Only Imagine, and now she has a new movie called Overcomer coming out this August. So we take the message of that movie live on the road and the new music from Altered, and we get to be in front of audiences live all over the country. So we're excited about that.
That is so cool. She's an incredible actress.
Yeah,
you must be so proud of her.
I'm so proud.
Well, Anthony, thank you so much. We can't wait to hear you sing. You can hear Anthony pour his heart out in his brand new CD. It's called Altered, spelled ALTARED, and it's available wherever music is sold. In just a few seconds, Anthony's going to be singing for us with a debut single off that album. And that song is called Fighting for Us. Here's Anthony.
Still ahead.
This is my old house.
A drive-through of an old neighborhood.
A lot of memories, a lot of pain.
And the search for a way out once and for all.
I didn't think it was something that you could ever be healed from.
Welcome back to Washington for this CBN News break. We have an update on a story that CBN News has been following. The landlord and parent company of a Virginia senior living community have responded to a federal lawsuit filed by an elderly couple over a Bible study. Ken and Lieve Hauge could be evicted if they hold a Bible study in their apartment. They filed a federal lawsuit alleging religious discrimination in housing. The couple's attorney says the defendants met the response deadline this week and denied the allegations in the Hauge's complaint. Threat of eviction notice called Bible study class, religious movie screenings, and counseling sessions banned business operations. Well, CBN's Operation Blessing is providing hygiene training to remote communities in Honduras. Basic hygiene like hand washing and toothbrushing are often overlooked in El Corazon and Guanales. That's because these communities are so remote and healthcare is scarce. But Operation Blessing held health training seminars in local elementary schools, teaching students how to properly brush their teeth and wash their hands. Operation Blessing also handed out hygiene kits containing soap, combs, toothbrushes, and toothpaste. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by visiting ob.org. Gordon and Wendy will be back with more today's 700 Club right after this.
Mr. Chow would do anything for his son Ray, and so when Ray was born with a cleft lip and palate, Mr. Chow worked long hours to help pay for surgery. Still, he could never make enough to afford the operation, and time was running out.
When Mr. Chow's second son was born, he couldn't even hold him.
I couldn't stop thinking about his face and wondering what his future would be like. I didn't know what to do.
Ray was born with a cleft lip and palate.
I wanted him to have a better life than what I could give him. I thought maybe he'd be better off with someone else who could afford surgery. I told my wife, and she asked me to please just hold Ray. So after 3 days, I held him for the first time.
Ray touched my husband's face with his little hand, and my husband wept.
The connection was so strong that Mr. Chow vowed never to give up on Ray. He worked long hours to raise money for surgery. Meanwhile, Ray was always in danger.
Because of the gap in his lip, he was more likely to get dirt and bacteria in his mouth, so his immunity was bad.
Once he got pneumonia, and several times he almost choked to death.
His brother tried to feed him fruit, and it got stuck. He couldn't breathe.
He fell into a coma. His brother started to cry and said, "I'm sorry, Ray. I just wanted to share."
The couple got the food out, but was always worried about what would happen next.
When I carried him to the market, kids would shout, "I see an ugly monster."
One man said, "Why do you bring him out? Don't you worry about scaring people?"
So I started covering his mouth with a veil. I just hoped that someone would help him.
Then some healthcare workers told the Chows about CBN and how we provide cleft lip and palate surgeries for poor children like Ray. Soon, Ray's lip was completely fixed.
Now my baby has hope. Ray can finally eat all by himself, and he doesn't choke. I'm so thankful for CBN. We can really feel your love.
Without you, my son would have lived in pain and fear his whole life. Thank you for helping him. It's like a dream come true. Now, Ray's mouth is good. Because of your love, my son can have a normal life, and my family can be happy.
Because of your love, because you cared enough to give, that little child has a smile. What a wonderful thing. If you're a member of the 700 Club, that thank you goes to you because you're a part of it. A portion of every gift to the 700 Club goes into the work of Operation Blessing to help people around the world. If you're not a member, I invite you to join us. It's real easy. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call 1-800-700-7000 and say, I want to join the 700 Club. How much is it? Well, it's $20 a month, and that breaks out to 65 cents a day. If you're already a member of the 700 Club, consider increasing. Consider going to 700 Club Gold. That's $40 a month. We also have 1,000 Club. That's $1,000 a year, and that breaks out to $84 a month. At whatever level, call us now, 1-800-700-7000. And when you call with your pledge, I want you to have this. I want to send it to you. It's called The Plan. 8 keys to understanding God's will for your life. It's my father's latest DVD teaching. It's one of his life messages. How do you know the will of God? How do you know God's plan for you? It's yours when you call and join. So call us, 1-800-700-7000, or go to cbn.com. Wendy?
Coming up, the daughter of an addict winds up just like her mom.
I remember the first time thinking, gosh, this doesn't hurt like it did before. I don't cry every second of the day now.
See how she shattered this generational cycle when we come back.
The woman in our next story grew up with a mother who was strung out on drugs, and she was often left alone or at the mercy of others. Even worse, years later, this woman was doing the exact same thing to her own children.
This is my old neighborhood. A lot of memories, a lot of pain. I can remember us being so hungry that we had to eat out of the trash can at Church's Chicken.
Too often, there was no food in Wisdom Williams' home, but there was always drugs and alcohol. Her mother was only 12 when she had her first child. A heroin user, she passed on her pain and addiction to her children.
At 5 years old, my mother handed me a can of beer and a cigarette. I didn't really realize that there was more to life, that there was people who lived and had happiness in their homes.
When Wisdom was 8, her mother took off and left her in the care of a stepfather. Her nightmare only got worse.
This is my old house. One of the apartments upstairs is where my stepdad was molesting me.
The abuse went on for 3 years until her mom came home and kicked the stepfather out. But the reunion was short-lived. She left again, leaving Wisdom and her brothers with their abusive grandmother. Even at school, Wisdom felt she had no one who cared about her.
I was unlikable. I mean, after all, look at this worthless person I was that was being molested, and mother abandoned me, and I had no real friends. So, yeah, why would they like me?
However, there was one thing giving her hope.
I had this feeling that I can't even explain and I could never shake it, about a love that was beautiful, and it was lasting, and it was unconditional. And I just felt like it was there, it was out there somewhere.
Until she could find it, she looked to drugs, alcohol, and relationships for happiness. At 14, she had her first child and dropped out of school.
I knew that she was the most important thing in my life. And I'm thinking, somebody help me figure out how this is supposed to be done the right way.
That someone was her daughter's grandmother, who helped Wisdom get an apartment and go to vocational school. But the year Wisdom graduated, she lost her mother, best friend, and boyfriend. She then found relief in cocaine.
I remember the first time thinking, gosh, this doesn't hurt like it did before. I don't cry every second of the day now.
Wisdom would spend the next 15 years as a functioning addict. In that time, she had 5 more children with different fathers and was working multiple jobs to provide for her kids.
My children were the most important thing to me. I didn't do it all right, but I loved my children and I wanted us to be together as a family.
Then, her boyfriend molested her 8-year-old daughter.
My whole world fell apart at that point. I couldn't do anything. I knew the devastation, I knew the pain, I knew the shame, I knew what it would do to my daughter. I knew there was no quick fix for this, and I didn't think it was something that you could ever be healed from. I failed her, failed them all.
As drug binges became her norm, she often left her children alone at home. Acting on tips from neighbors, police arrested Wisdom on child endangerment charges, and her kids were put in foster care.
How could you lose those kids? How could you lose those kids? And I didn't feel like I could make it without them, like I could live without them. They were the only thing I had in this world.
After a night in jail, she was released. The next day, she received a visit from Janelle, a Christian from a nearby church.
She said, Jesus Christ died on a cross so that you could be saved, so that you could be free from this addiction. She said, he loves you so much. And I said, my own mother didn't love me. My own father didn't love me. And he loved me like that? She said, yes. I said, what do I need to do? And she said, just ask him to come into your heart. Ask him to forgive you of your sins. So I did exactly what she said. I thought, wow, any moment now, it's gonna be a poof pow type thing, and I'm just gonna be completely fixed.
But it wouldn't happen that way for Wisdom. 4 months later, she was still addicted to crack cocaine and missed her court date. Janelle confronted her.
You have to fight. And I tell you, I could hear the Spirit of the Lord speak just as clear. He said, you're gonna have to choose me today. You're gonna have to choose me today.
And she did. Wisdom turned herself in, knowing Jesus was working in her heart.
I packed my Bible and I got pictures of my children. And then I called them all. And I said, I'm going away. I don't know how long I will be gone. But this is what I know. When I come back, I will never be the same again.
While in jail for 6 months, Wisdom grew in her faith and even started a Bible study.
I wanted to tell them what Jesus did for them. I wanted them to know and understand that there was hope and that they could do all things through Christ who strengthened them. I wanted them to develop a relationship with him just as I had done.
After her release, Wisdom went back to work and regained custody of her children. Now the host of TV show Wisdom Speaks, she shares about the love and hope she found 20 years ago in Jesus Christ.
There were things that happened during my journey of getting well. And I said, well, why am I here? Why am I going through that? He said, well, you've been wondering what it is you can do to make me leave you. You're in my hand now. And nothing, absolutely nothing can pluck you out of my hand. He loved me like nobody else. And he never let me go.
And he'll never let you go. Nothing can snatch you out of his hand. Nothing can separate you from the love of Christ, his love, which was poured out for you on a cross. That love is eternal. It doesn't change. It doesn't go away. It always accomplishes its mission. Love never fails. God will never give up on you. You may have given up on yourself. You may, just like Wisdom, think, well, nobody's ever loved me. My mother didn't love me. My father didn't love me. No one's ever loved me. I don't even love myself. But there's a God who loves you and has a wonderful exchange for you, where all you have to do is ask him in, and he will take your life, he will take your heart, and he will make you new again. Now, for Wisdom, she prayed that prayer, and then months later, she's still in addiction, she's still missing court dates, she still has all the trouble. And God speaks to her and says, today you have to choose me. That's the great mystery of salvation. It's not a one and done. You have to choose God. The Apostle Paul put it this way, he put it a couple different ways, but one is, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Is the cross a finished fact? Yes. Is it an accomplished work? Yes. If you believe in that accomplished work, then yes. But then you have to fight. You have to say, I turn away from my evil desires and I turn to him. That's the whole fight of the good fight of faith, where you believe and you keep on believing that God will get you through it, that he will see you to the other side. Even if you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, it's the great promise that he's with you. But he doesn't take away that valley. He says, just keep on walking and keep on walking with me. And that's where you learn every step is a step of faith. Every day is a day of faith. This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And when you choose him, every day, wonderful things can happen. It's when we turn away from him that we get ourselves into trouble. We turn to him, he'll see you through any catastrophe, any difficulty, any compulsion, any addiction. You just turn to him every single day. and he'll see you through. If you want this, I want you to do the same thing that wisdom did. She bowed her head, she asked Jesus to come into her heart, and then she learned he will never leave her. He will never forsake her. Even though she stumbled, he wouldn't let her fall. If you want it, bow your head, let's pray, and let's let God do everything else. Jesus, that's right, say his name. Jesus, I ask you to come into my heart. I ask you to forgive me of all the things that I've done wrong. I ask you to cleanse me and make me new. And Jesus, if you do this for me, I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life. Hear my prayer, for I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. If you prayed with me, let me know. Give us a call, 1-800-700-7000. And when you call, here's a word for you from Romans. For whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. We'll see you again. God bless.